Hey guys, Rick Taylor here with KSUSA. Today we're going to talk about how to service your LEVCi and LEV Integra Gen 1 dropper seat posts. Okay, so some of the basic tools that we're going to need to service KS dropper we'll go over here. If there are additional or specific or specialty tools for your particular model that we're going to go over, we'll discuss those in further detail a little bit later on in the video. So you want to start with a good quality biodegradable degreaser. We tend to like the Simple Green cleaners here. You can dilute them down to whatever ratio you want. They wash away easily, and they're not caustic or damaging. So a good degreaser. For lubrication, we recommend either the KS Post Paste, or if you don't have that available, the Slick Oleum is basically the same formula. It's designed specifically for suspension use, more specifically air oil systems, so it's a really good lubrication to use. We don't recommend using automotive grease because they tend to be a higher viscosity and can cause poor performance of your dropper if you use those. A pair of soft jaws so that you can hold the seat post. The one that we have here happens to have a round clamp hole in it, but if you can't find one of these in your local market, you can also do a V-block, which a lot of times you can get those from Amazon or from a local hardware store, a machine shop supply. Those kind of places have them. And essentially you just need something that you're going to be able to clamp and hold the tube. If you don't have access to that, don't panic. You can also use the bicycle frame to hold the post in place while we unthread the collar. We'll go over that in a little more detail later. Utility knife, we generally will use this just to help us remove the guide bushings. So these are handy to have. If you don't have one, you can do it by using your fingernail, but I'd recommend if you can find a utility knife, definitely grab that. A set of Allen wrenches. So you're going to need from a 6 down to a 1.5 millimeter set. So they can either be a T-handle like this, or you can have one of the little pocket folding ones work great too, but just make sure they're good quality so you don't end up rounding or stripping out any of the bolts. Last would be a strap wrench, and the strap wrench is basically to remove the collar. You'll need these on nearly all models of KS dropper, with the exception of the A12 Integra and the Rage I. So those two will use a little different system that we'll talk about later, but the strap wrench you can get from most hardware stores, and they're generally used for fitting pipes that you don't want to do damage to. So if they're a chrome finish or something, these allow you to grab and turn pipe without damaging the surface. So local hardware stores, and again, this is called a strap wrench. And then we definitely like to use a microfiber towel for cleaning and the internal parts and everything. These work really well with the degreaser. They tend to take all of the debris off of your post. So you can get these through most hardware stores, or if you have a Costco in your area, they do their Kirkland brand of towels that work really well. So we're going to go ahead and start by using our soft jaws here. Because this post is carbon, we want to be really careful with this when we're clamping it, not to clamp it too tight and damage the carbon mast. So we'll go ahead and put this in. And just snug enough to hold it so that we can get the end cap out of it. And we didn't talk about this in the video earlier with tools, but an adjustable wrench works great for this. Okay, and I like to just use a rag to turn this. Some of the edges are just a little sharp on the actuator. This just saves your hand. Okay, now we're going to turn this around just for the sake of you being able to see this more clearly. If you're working on your post, you don't actually have to flip this. Okay, so we're going to take our strap wrench and we're going to loosen the seal collar here. Okay, set that aside. Okay, now I like to just take the utility knife, and just the back of the wrench here works great, the plastic handle. if you take the utility knife and put the blade right on the edge where that DU bushing meets, just give it a little tap. That'll knock that out of there and make that a lot easier to disassemble. Okay. Now, if you have V-block or soft jaws, use those. If you don't, and you're going to grab this shaft in your vise, you can use the rubber portion of your strap wrench here and use it to clamp. Just be really careful here. This is aluminum. If you get the serrated teeth onto that shaft, you're going to damage it and render that cartridge useless. So you want to be really careful there. Just tighten this down enough to hold it in place. And this is a lot lower torque, so we can just go ahead and turn from this part of the actuator housing. That's going to unthread. I like to put a little bit of side load on it once I get it unthreaded and pull out, and that's going to get the push rod to come out with this assembly. We're going to go ahead and set that aside. Then our bottom out bumper, we're going to set that aside. We'll set our soft blocks aside, and we can go ahead and slide this apart. Now, you're going to be careful as we slide this out of here, because we don't want to lose the small parts inside. And you're going to have, depending on the production year of your post, you may have these 3 POM bushings and then the 3 metallic bushings, or you could just have 1 long metallic bushing. If you have the long metallic, you don't need to run out and grab these other bushings that are on the newer post. You have a roller clutch in this system, and it does the job of those POM pellets. The only reason the new production has these is because it just uniformity of the internal parts. We switched over to this system on all the posts, but if you've got those one-piece longer bushings, they're totally fine. Just clean those up and reuse them. No need to change to these other ones. Okay, so now we've got a little of the degreaser on our rag. Let's add a little extra there. And we're gonna go ahead and clean the cartridge. Go ahead and slide off your wiper seal. And the DU bushing kind of slid out with it. So we got those both out. We're gonna clean the inside of the wiper seal. Go ahead and clean the DU bushing when we've got it off. Now, if you've disassembled this because you are having a problem with a leak in your cartridge, or you have some squish where it doesn't hold position when the post is supposed to be locked and you need to replace the cartridge, now would be the time to go ahead and do that. If your cartridge is in good shape and you're going to reuse it, I recommend probably going ahead and pulling the head off, if you have the clamp rather off, if you haven't already done that. Okay, we'll set all this stuff aside. Now, depending on the production year of your post, you may have a separate end cap or a one-piece cap. Either one is fine, both work. Really no benefit of one over the other. And then you may or may not have an air cap here on your air valve. So if you do have the air cap, wipe everything down clean before you open it. Take that air cap off. And with your shock pump, go ahead and put that on and check your pressure. Now you heard a little bit of air escape, also some air went into the hose. So when you look at your air pressure on your pump and it shows that you're low, don't panic. It doesn't necessarily mean you have a leak in the cartridge. It just means that some of the pressure in there went into here, and that's why it shows low. So when you pump this back up, it's gonna bring the pressure back up. We'd recommend between 175 to 200 PSI. For lighter riders, 175 gives an easier to compress function. If you're a heavier rider and you want a faster rebound, you can go up to 200 PSI and you'll get a faster rebound. The trade-off is it's just slightly harder to compress. So So for smaller riders, that may not be preferable. Don't go over 200 PSI. Really, there's no benefit because the seals stick and create a kind of a damping effect. So you're not going to get any faster return. All that's going to do is make it harder to compress the seat post. Okay. Now, if you're in the market for a pump, I would highly recommend getting one with a 2-stage chuck. And why that's important is, as we unscrew here, this one stays on, this one threads back. That allows the valve to close so all the air stays in here. You don't lose any pressure when you take this off. That little hiss was the air inside the hose there. Now, keep in mind that you've set this at your 175 to 200 PSI. If you put the pump back on here, it will be lower than what you set it at. That's because the air from here has to fill that hose up before it registers on the gauge. So don't panic, it doesn't mean you have a leak. Just set your pressure to the correct pressure and then go ahead and leave it. You don't need to go back and check it again. Okay, if you had an air valve cap on, go ahead and put that on. Use your flathead to screw that back in place. Okay, now I like to clean where the cradle fits on the cartridge, and I also like to get in there and clean the cradle really well. Make sure there's no grit or debris in it. A little bit of grease. I like to put that on the inside where these mate together. That way it prevents any creaking, corrosion, water buildup, anything like that. Make sure when you put this back on, you have a low side and a high side. Your cradle has a low side and a high side. Make sure they line up. If it's backwards like this, that's not going to function properly. So line it up like that. Then take some of your grease, and we're going to fill the cavity between the two wiper lips here. And that does two things. It pre-lubes the system as it slides, but it also creates a water barrier and it keeps water out of the system. Your DU bushing that we cleaned earlier, we'll go ahead and put that in place. Slide it on. And then we'll go ahead and clean those bushings. The metallic bushing goes to the bottom. You notice that they can fall out. Well, this one's not going to do it for me to show you, but in a lot of cases, if there's no grease here, these will fall right back out. So what I like to do is just put a little bit of grease in the slots before you put those bushings in. And then we'll put the POM on top. And again, if you have the one piece without the POM, it's going to do the same job. No reason to run out and change those bushings. Now, really important that we clean the roller clutch. So we're just going to take a little degreaser on your rag, get in there and rotate it back and forth till the rag's clean. And when you look in and see the roller clutch, the retainer should be bright white. The roller pins inside, you should see that they're a brass color, and then you know that it's properly clean. You can also take your Allen wrench or any of your tools and use the shaft on it to push the rag down inside. Move that around and pull it out. Look down inside and make sure that everything looks clean inside. You can also hold it up to the light and make sure that it's all clean inside. Then take some of your grease. You're going to take that grease and you're going to push it down into the bearing and then just kind of move it around and do it again. Move it around, do it again, move it around. And push as much grease as you can in there till you see that the grease has completely filled the inside of that retainer. And then a little bit of extra grease and put that down inside the mast. Now we're going to take the assembly here. If you put your thumb, your pointer finger, and your middle finger on those three bushings, when you put them in, go ahead and basically slide this down, and you'll feel it hit the bushing. Now rotate this clockwise until it drops down. Okay, now I used my fingers to hold those three POM bushings in until it slid past. if you force it and you let those drop out, you're going to damage those bushings. So make sure you go slow with it. Then we're going to take the DU bushing. We're just going to take the plastic handle here. Tap it in. We're going to thread that. And we're going to clean that with the degreaser and make sure the outside of that collar is clean. Now we're going to go ahead and put our bottom out bumper. Now in case you separated these, there's a long end and a short end. The long end needs to go into the push rod end cap. I like to clean this, put some fresh grease on it when I do it. And go ahead and install that in there. And also put a little bit of grease on the outside of the push rod. Go ahead and thread this back in by hand. And again, make sure that that bottom out bumper is already on. Okay, this part's really important. We're going to put the soft jaws on. We're going to snug this down, just hand tight. Now, this is hand tight right now. We're not going to put the wrench on this way and torque it. We're going to put the wrench on this way. And you can see that's bottomed out. That's as far as we need to turn it. Okay, this is an alloy hollow shaft that goes inside there. If you over torque it, you'll shear it off. That part will be stuck in your cartridge and you'll probably have to replace the cartridge and the actuator. So make sure you don't over torque this. Just that little skosh past hand tight is plenty. We're going to go ahead and take this out. Start threading this in. And we're going to go ahead and drop it back in the soft jaws and clamp it on the mast. Okay. Now you can run it up like this till it touches with the wrench, but don't torque it from this outside position. What you want to do is use the wrench on the flats when you tighten this back down. Okay, so we've got it hand tight. That's it. That's all we need. Okay, now, a lot of you like to test your post before you put it back in the bike, and that's probably a good idea. What I will recommend is when you put something in here to actuate this, it's really important that you don't do this on an angle. It needs to be pulled straight up and not on an angle. If you angle it, it'll break the actuator. So when you do this, I like to just hold onto it this way and I pull up. Okay, you can hear a good top out, good function. Everything's running smoothly. So you'll again want to line this up. Now is a good time to put a little bit of grease or anti-seize on all the metal-to-metal surfaces. Go ahead and reinstall your clamp. And when you put those bolts in, make sure you torque them to the spec that's listed on your post. And make sure on a 2-bolt system that you torque them evenly. And that's it. It's ready to go back on your bike and go out to ride.